The landscape is very saturated, but it is not saturated with excellence.
Oh my God, I'm so grateful I didn't stop. The message of consistency is such an important thing.
Yes, it took an incredible amount of sacrifice, because if you cannot do something consistently, I don't give a how good you are at it. It will not get traction for you. Consistency is everything.
In predictability, our nervous systems are comfortable.
I continued showing up when so many people gave up.
Don't be afraid to make it personal and tell the stories, not just like a bunch of bullet points that you have to hit in the recording.
Having a personal brand, having a following is more important now than ever. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Boss Babe podcast. So today we thought we would do something fun. We actually hosted a Q&A for our membership community, the Société, which by the way, every single one of you need to be members of if you're not already. It is the best place on the internet for female entrepreneurs to grow freedom-based businesses. But we specifically did a Q&A all around content, audience growth, really being able to build an audience of buyers, to create content that people really connect with. I feel like it was so relevant to every single one of you that we wanted to bring it onto the podcast. Well, for one, give you a little sneak peek as to what happens inside Société, but second, just bring the answers to the questions. So the way that we did it, Lindsay's here, Lindsay was moderating, the audience was submitting questions, and we were kind of just answering on the spot. Before we dive in, Lindsay, I'm really curious for you, what was your biggest kind of takeaway on that? And as you're thinking about it, I'll share for me one insight that I had on this call was I really wish people would just trust their expertise and their uniqueness a little bit more. And I do this myself too, so it's like good advice for me too, but I just notice so much that people get in their own way because they just think, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, or like I've been doing it for a few months and it's just not resonating, I should give up. And like I want to jump through my screen and shake them and be like, do you know how good you are? Like, do you know if you just freaking stuck with it for a little bit longer, like it would work? And I feel like that's what I needed to hear and sometimes still need to hear, but that one just like really got me today.
I mean, I mentioned it on the call, but I'm glad I listened to this podcast this morning with Mr. Beast because I'm not like, I've never watched any of his YouTube videos or anything, but I obviously am aware of him. And the whole podcast was about how many times he quit and started and quit and started. And then finally was, figured out, oh, if I'm just consistent, I just do it every day. Like this day there's one comment, but like 2 weeks later I had 20 comments. And then 2 months later I had 100 comments on every video and they were interacting with me and I was getting ideas. And all of a sudden I was making videos that people wanted from me because I was getting engagement. And then I was learning about my audience and then like, boom, here we are. And I'm a billionaire, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, fast forward 10 years, but there's a certain mindset that can overcome the crickets, right? Because the first 100, and he said something about the rule of 100, like you have to do it 100 times and commit to yourself that every single one for 100. So whether it's 100 Instagram posts, 100 YouTube videos, 100 podcasts, every single one, you will write down one thing you learned that you are going to apply to the next one. And if you can approach that level of like beginner mindset and also consistency, you'll win at anything. And I think there's just some people for whom that comes naturally and a lot of people for whom that's really hard because we get in our own way around self-doubt. We get in our own way around comparison. We get in our own way around making a million excuses about why our life is not conducive to that much work, And I think we hear all of those things. And that's why, we want to like come through the screen and be like, you got this. Like, just like, I promise you in 3 months, it's going to be so different if you stick with it. But that's a really like human existential thing to feel self-doubt, to feel comparison, to feel overwhelm and like you don't have enough time. And I think what's cool to see all these questions and then in a live Q&A, you can, the listener won't necessarily see it, but we can see the chat moving and people's response to it. And it's like, so much of it comes down to like the tools are there and we teach you a lot of the tools and Société has a ton of the tools. And that's what these calls are about, is reminding you that all the tools are right here in this curriculum that you're a member of. And applying the tools is a personal game. It is an inner game. Like you have got to show up for yourself every day and apply the tools. The tools are not easy buttons. The tools are a roadmap and you've got to get on the road and do the steps. And I think that's overall my takeaway from every one of these calls is like, a lot of people just need somebody to give them permission or give them a little kick in the booty of like, hey, get out on the road. The steps are there. You just got to go do it. And even if you fail the first 100 times, nobody's going to think you're bad at it. Like be in the beginner mindset and accept that we're all learning and that everybody you look up to and that you learn from started at the same place. So I love these calls because it's both like cool for us to get the questions and be able to kind of have to think through how the tools work to solve different people's problems. But also, I think it's amazing for the community to see each other ask a question, get an answer, and it resonate for hundreds of people in the chat. You know, you're just seeing the chat fly by and they're like, oh my God, I needed to hear this today about sticking with my email list or starting the podcast or not being worried about 100 views on my reel. So yeah, I loved that. That was, these are always so fun.
That's such good advice. The Mr. Beast one, 100 videos are like 100 things. For anyone that's listening, like that's all you take away from the episode and that's all you do. I promise you 100 videos from now, you're in a completely different place, or 100 podcast episodes from now, you're in a completely different place. I love it. Okay, well, with that, let's dive in. And listen, I'd love to get your feedback on these kind of Q&As. So comment, drop us a note, just let us know, does this resonate? Is this something you'd like a little bit more of? Because these are fun for us and it's always nice to give you a sneak behind the scenes. And then any links that we mentioned throughout the episode, they'll be linked in the show notes. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. So as we're kicking off, we're going to put a poll up in the Zoom room right now. And what that's going to do is just give us a little bit of a lay of the land of what you guys are struggling with, what your main kind of pain points are. And we're really going to make sure that the questions that we're answering are just really tailored to you and to what you're actually struggling with.
All right, let's start with some questions. So here's the first question. My following on Instagram is 1,400 people. Most of them are personal clients or personal contacts, not potential clients. Do you suggest a lead magnet to a free webinar or putting the lead magnet right to the whole program? Yeah, basically, I think what they're asking is essentially going to a webinar or just going right to the program and keeping the free webinar for later once I have a different audience.
Okay, this is a really good question. So to kind of sum it up for all of you, what it sounds like is this person has an audience, but right now this audience is very much just friends, family, and really not targeted to their niche. And they're wondering, what do I put up there and share? So what's really important when we are sharing our funnel is that we have the relevant traffic we can actually put into the funnel. So I would take a little step back and just think about, how can I start to build my audience with my ideal clients? Now, it's not to say that putting your lead magnet out was not going to bring in some clients. It actually might. You might have some people following along that are more your ideal clients than you realized. But if we're pretty certain that's not the case, we do need to work on that. So first and foremost, to answer the question, I always really recommend promoting the lead magnet. The ideal client qualifier is really important to qualify your ideal client and to then move them through the funnel and move them through the stages. That part's really, really important. But what matters most is that you can really get relevant traffic through the funnel. So let's talk about that. Let's just pull back a little bit and talk traffic. So there's 3 types of traffic. We can build traffic, we can buy traffic, we can borrow traffic. So build traffic would be building traffic on your platforms. So your social media, your email list, your podcast, YouTube, wherever you're doing it. Buying traffic would be paid ads, and then borrowing traffic would be affiliates. Now, in order to make sales, we have to have traffic. We can have the best funnel in the world, the best offer in the world, but if we are not putting consistent traffic through that funnel, we will not make any sales. And I know you guys know this, but I love to just set the stage with it because it can feel really disheartening if we then spend the time to put out this ideal client qualifier and we get no ideal clients. We're like, do I suck? Does anyone even care about what I do? Where do I go with this? So that's the first thing that I want to set the stage with. And so then when it comes to actually getting these ideal clients, what do we do? Well, it sounds like social media is something that you really want to be doing. So building traffic is really important to you. And what I will say is building traffic is one of the best ways to grow your business because it is a highly engaged audience that will grow with you. They will build that know, like, and trust factor with you more and more every week. And it's one of the longest ways. It takes the longest to build traffic in this way. And so we need to decide, do we have the time to wait to spend a few months to build this audience, or do we need traffic in the door right away? And so if we do kind of need those sales in the door right away, but we still do want to build an audience, then we might do a straddled strategy where we actually spend some money driving paid leads through our funnel and also building an audience on social media. That's the approach that I would recommend to get money in the door immediately and to be building a long-term engaged audience. So what I would be doing is making sure that I've got a really, really great funnel, which, by the way, you guys, I just want to let you know firsthand, FFT opens in March. If you have not been through FFT and you're interested in it, let's get you on the wait list. Let's get you signed up. We start opening doors in March, and that's designed to help you build this highly converting funnel. So we'll get you on the wait list. We can get a link in. So you have to have a highly converting funnel. Then I want you to start spending on it. So go back to any sessions that I've done with you where I talk about actually putting together content that's really going to help you to bring in paid buyers. So start to put some ads out there. Really start to get leads in the door. Paid ads can start working within 24 hours. So you could be building filling your funnel within 24 hours. So that's really important. And then when it comes to actually growing your audience, I think if you do have an audience of around 1,400 people, still doing a bit of a reintroduction post. Hey, I'm Natalie, and here's what I do. And put yourself out there and just say, if you know of anyone you think will be a really good fit, send them my way, send them this freebie. Start to really put yourself out there and tell the story of why you do what you do and what it is that you do. And then make sure in your content mix every week, you have at least 3 posts that are designed to help you grow an audience of buyers. 3 posts per week designed to help you grow an audience of buyers. Now, the best way to do this is, first and foremost, make sure you go check out the 10 by 10 challenge inside the Society. It's going to teach you how to go viral. Now, going viral, I'm not trying to get you on the morning news. What I mean by that is actually you want to be getting people to see your account who are not currently seeing it. So you want to have your content shared with people that are not following. And this content should be very, very niche and specific, that the only people that are going to want to follow you are the buyers, the people that are your ideal clients. Then when you put your lead magnet out once a week, you're going to be bringing in more and more people. All right. And just seeing the chat blow up, when I did the 10 by 10 last year, I grew my account from 9,000 to over 60,000 in 3 weeks. It works. Can we get Cassidy's testimonial screenshot and get this out there? Because I know it works, but it's like a lot of people don't want to do it because it's uncomfortable. But seeing people like Cassidy just be like, you guys, it works. Like, it works. Now imagine going from 9,000 to 60,000 in just a matter of weeks. That doesn't just change your business. That changes your entire life, because those are your ideal clients. Those are your buyers. And that is what we call building an audience. So a very long-winded answer to say, please do not sleep on building an audience. Having a personal brand, having a following is more important now than ever. And it really is such a long-term ticket to success.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of questions in here about, I'm trying, it's not working. I've done things, but I'm still really slow to grow. I feel like my content is boring. I'm seeing a bunch of people kind of all with the same problem around, I've done everything and I'm just stalled out. How do I get beyond these 1,000 followers? And so there's a couple questions around I feel boring, or I feel like I'm saying the same thing all the time. And then this other side of the question, which is I'm really getting wrapped up in comparing myself to other people, because I'm doing so much research and I'm watching so many people and I do what they do and it doesn't work for me. So that's kind of 2 sides of the same coin. But what are your thoughts there?
Okay, 2 things. I'm going to give you coaching on this. But team, can we grab the link for Traffic Accelerator? If any of you want to really just dive in and just accelerate your learning on this, and put the link in for Traffic Accelerator, where we'll teach you how to really craft an engaging strategy. Okay, let's dive in. Firstly, people think your content's boring. My question is your content boring? And I'm not saying that to be mean, but what I mean by that is, and you'll all agree with me, I feel like I log onto social media and I scroll through and it's a sea of sameness. It is a sea of sameness. And that is quite boring. And so often we will create content that is the same as everyone else's if we don't have our own strategy. Because generally we're shooting in the dark. I don't know what is going to work. I don't know what is going to land with my audience. So let me just do what I'm seeing other people do and cross my fingers and hope for the best. If I hop on a trending audio, I hop on a trend, maybe it'll work. That's really, really challenging, and it's hard to really grow from there. So I'm going to give you One, jump into Traffic Accelerator. If you want a really, really strong strategy, jump into there. It's freaking amazing. The second thing, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. And I do these Q&As all the time. So every time I'll come and give you more and more advice. I'm only going to give you one because this advice is one of those things. It's going to sound very easy for me to say. It's going to be quite challenging to actually execute, right? I'm just going to be super honest. Like these kinds of things, it's like, sounds good, Natalie, but this is going to take me so much work to do it. I want you to create a content series. If you feel like your content is boring, if it's falling flat and it's not getting engagement, I want you to create a content series. Let me explain. So a series is something where you're going to really pick some expertise you have in your niche. So let me just give you some examples. Let's say you're a women's health coach and you specifically are focused on helping women get pregnant, right? If that's your niche, which I love it, that's a very, very specific niche, a content series might be 10 things you need to know when it comes to nutrition and getting pregnant, right? It can be like that simple, 10 things. So that would be the content series. And what you would do is you would record 10 highly, highly valuable and niche videos, highly valuable and niche videos that you would post over a series of days. Now you might post 10 videos in 10 days, you might post 10 videos over 20 days, but it's a series. And here's how you'll frame it. You can just set your phone up and talk to your phone. You might even get one of those like mini TikTok mics, good lighting. Let's make sure this video looks good. And you will start with a hook. So you'll say, this one thing cannot be overlooked when it comes to getting pregnant and when you're looking at nutrition. So that's your hook. Then you'll let them know it's a series. Hi, I'm Natalie and I'm a health coach, and this is a series on everything you need to know when it comes to nutrition for getting pregnant. I'm going to be sharing 10 things over the next 10 days. Then you'll go into the actual content, the actual value, and then at the end, you'll let them know, tomorrow I'll be sharing about X, right? And so you're actually being really, really niche. And what you are doing is framing yourself as an expert and giving tons of value and letting people know that you'll be frequently coming back. This is a really good way to reinvigorate your content, to give your content a very specific niche, to tell Instagram or whichever platform you're using, these are the people that I serve. This is the kind of content that I give out there. I would not recommend posting one of these per week. I would recommend one a day or one every couple of days. You have to be very prolific with this, but it's just one series. I have seen people grow like crazy doing these series, and it really, really works, but it cannot be broad. It cannot be basic. It cannot be a ChatGPT special. It has to be really, really specific for you. All right. That is really, really important. So hopefully that'll help. That's the one thing that I'm going to say for right now would change the game for you. Because like I said, if your content is falling flat, it's not getting engagement, it's boring, what you're really lacking is content strategy. And this will help you to start really shaping up your content strategy. And then where you'll go from here is starting to come up with different content segments. Like, what do you post each day? Is every day different? Is it a reel one day, a carousel a next, a quote another? What kind of niche are you delivering value around? How are you doing that? But this is one of the best ways to start. And like I said, it can be really challenging to get going because the idea of sitting down and recording 10 videos, 20 videos, 30 videos is a lot of work, especially when every video needs a really strong hook and it needs a lot of value, but it is worth it.
So the next question is from Gloria, and she's saying, I need to hire a social media manager. And I think this is touching on what you just said. This is an important conversation because I think the next objection people are going to have is like, there's no way I can do this by myself. And Gloria is saying, I need to hire someone. And every time I hire someone, my views go down, my engagement goes down. My talking head reels with my face on them tend to do the best. She said she has between 10,000 and 500,000 views on her reels. How do I hire someone to help me with my posts, and when what works the best is me doing it? I think this is a perennial entrepreneur question, especially around personal brand and social media.
This is such a good question. Now I have two responses to this. One is I want to challenge, I do not have time. I really want to challenge that because here's the thing. And I'm going to assume everyone here is running a freedom-based business. We know these are different kinds of businesses. Like a freedom-based business is ran very differently to a VC-backed company or something like this. So I just want to pre-frame with that. In a freedom-based business, we should only be doing what moves the needle. Because if we are not, we find ourselves in a business where we are stretched so thin, energetically, and with our margins, right? That is not a freedom-based business. When you're on a hamster wheel of expenses, when you're on a hamster wheel of to-do lists, when you're on a hamster wheel of very stretched thin profit margins, that is anything but a freedom-based business. And I just want to call that out. So first and foremost, if you are doing things in your business that you do not have time to be doing, I really want to challenge you as to why you're doing it. So let's identify what the needle movers are in our business. For me personally, social media is a huge needle mover for me. So growing an audience is a big needle mover, and engaging with my community is a really big needle mover. And I see that as sacred. I see that as really, really important. There are other things in the business that I know I can delegate out, and there are other things in the business that actually I can just get off my plate completely, off anyone's plate completely, because they just don't move the needle. And there's tons of things in the business like that. We do an audit every single 3 months. And if it's not moving the needle, it's out. Like, we are not doing things in Boss Babe just for fun. We're not building a venture-backed company. We are not building a company that we're trying to exit. So we're not doing it for fun. If it isn't moving the needle, it's out. So that's the first thing, is let's question, why are we doing this? And generally things will fall into 2 buckets. There's things in the short term and things in the long term. Now, long-term plays might feel like, when you're actually in the present, it might feel like they're really not amounting to much, but you know it's important to do, because let's say with social media, having an audience 6 months from now, 12 months from now is going to be a really big needle mover for your business. So you know it's really important to keep doing it, but it feels like right now you're not really seeing the results from it. In that sense, I wouldn't say get rid of it. Short-term things might be, you're running paid ads and you're like, I don't really want to be doing paid ads for my business forever, but it brings money in the door today. That's really important. So just really important to think of those distinctions. The second thing, and I don't think this is going to be popular advice, but I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't say it, and no offense to any social media managers on here, they'll probably agree with me. You will be very, very challenged to find someone who can come in and manage your social media and grow your audience for you and create content that gets huge engagement. You will be very, very, very challenged to find that person, being really honest, unless you have a very solid playbook. So every single person's business is different. Every single person's niche, every single person's audience is very, very different. Now, I could pick the best social media. And by the way, listen, let me speak from experience. In the past, I have hired top-notch social media managers that come highly recommended. And I've hired them during a time where I didn't have time to train them. And I was a bottleneck, so other people on my team couldn't train them. So I hired them at a time I couldn't do the training, and they sucked. Their engagement was low, the content wasn't resonating, the audience was actually decreasing, not increasing. And I've been in the situation where I'm like, wait, they came so highly recommended, why do they suck? And I was like, oh, because I didn't give them the playbook. That is exactly why they suck, right? You have to be able to give them a playbook and say, this is the exact thing I do day in, day out that grows my audience and gets high engagement. And if you cannot show them those 2 things, you will not find someone who can succeed in that role. Because it's like, let me say it like this. It's like starting a business, right? And you're on day 1 and you haven't really made any money yet. And you bring in your first hire and you say, all right, go run the business. And they're like, what am I running? Like, there's no business to run. And you're kind of expecting them to go and build and run the business for you, right? None of us would ever expect that someone could do that, but we do expect them to do that with our social media. Only entrepreneurs and the people running their businesses are probably the people that are coming up with the whole blueprint and playbook of how to build the business, get it off the ground, and then get it running. And we have to think about that way for social media too. Like, you want to be able to teach someone how to create content that really resonates and show them your process and show them, listen, if I do these exact steps, I get this much engagement, I get these many followers, and then you set KPIs based on your own experience, because you know if you're doing XYZ, you should be hitting these results. That's what I will be doing, but you have to be able to delegate and train on your social media. So that's just really, really important. And I know it's not the best advice that I could be like, it doesn't sound great of like, yeah, they're going to come in and suck if you don't train them, but that really is the truth.
Oh, I was going to say, you know, as you're talking, like one of the things that we do, and we're in this conversation too, training our internal team how to do more of the content. And always, you know, we watch this stuff so closely, just how the industry is doing everything. And of course, so many people ask us this question. And I think one of the things too, in the question that she asked was around, it's my face that works. So how do I train someone to do something that doesn't use my face? And honestly, the question, like the answer to a lot of that is it is going to still need to be your face. If it's your brand, like, you know, if it's your business and it's your face that's used to sell programs, you're going to need to be on social media. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to create the finished product reel that goes up, right? And I think that's what we've learned is you can also build processes where you're capturing footage, or you're recording the B-roll of yourself, or you're doing face to camera recording, and then you're handing it off to someone who's trained to take that footage and turn it into high performing reels, or chop it into carousels, or, you know, turn it into content, and do that time intensive piece of taking the raw asset and making it something that can be posted and get traction for you on social. And so that might be another mindset to look at is I'm not going to try to train somebody to be able to remove myself from it, because that's not really what we're after here in a personal brand. But I can build the processes where I only have to do what only I can do, which is show up in front of the camera, and someone else can run the playbook on how to take that and make it an asset that can get posted.
And so here's a few ways that my social media manager does this for me. So we're in a shared Notion document where I'll put in ideas for videos that I have, and she'll put in ideas for videos that she has that I can record. Other ways is she will use images of me to create carousels. She will take my B-roll and turn that into reels. So she has a lot of content of me that she can be using and repurposing and all of that. And then there's a few things she's like, hey, record this face to camera, or I have ideas and I'll record the face to camera. And it's really going to be, when it's your face, a very collaborative process. And that doesn't mean that it can't take a huge weight off your shoulders, because it can probably take the 90% off of your shoulders. But then there's going to be that 10% that you want to be involved in. Like, you don't want stuff going out with your face on and your name on that you don't approve of. So there's ways like that you can make it work, but you have to playbook it first.
Okay, awesome. So Sol has a great question, and I think this is something that can kind of transcend to everybody. So she's saying, I started with a business teaching people how to bake. And then I noticed that a lot of the people I was teaching to bake wanted to sell what they were baking. And so now I've started to talk about how to create a baking business. And I've built a coaching program around that. And now I'm starting to promote that to my audience, who are mostly people that have come to me to learn to bake. And now I'm noticing that I'm getting much lower open rates. People are flagging me as spam. And I don't want to stop sharing my recipes and my baking stuff, because that's where I began. But also I want to do this other side of teaching people how to do the business. What do I do so I don't ruin my email list and my audience? And I feel like a lot of people have asked us this type of question in the past around, I'm kind of doing two sides of the same coin with my content. How do I speak to two different avatars on one account?
This is a great question. So this is where audience segmentation becomes really, really important. So I probably wouldn't, if you don't want to stop speaking to bakers, I probably wouldn't pivot your entire account. But you've got ideal client qualifier, hopefully, that you put out. And anyone that downloads that, they are basically telling you, hey, I'm really interested in turning my baking into a business. You will segment them on your email list as interested in building a business. You will actually segment them, and that will be a very separate list. You'll have your overall main list, then you'll have your separate list of people that have said they're interested. You can also send a very direct email to your whole list saying, hey, I'm actually going to be teaching people how to turn their baking into a business. If you'd be interested in receiving that content, click here. And when they click that email, they will also get segmented on your email list to be in that business email list. Now you'll send the usual content that you normally would to your whole list, people that you know are really interested, and then you'll send content that's about turning your baking into a business to this very specific segment. Segments are incredibly important when it comes to your email list. They really, really are. Everyone should be thinking about segments. Everyone should be thinking about what data points do I have on my audience where I can really be putting them into a segment where they're not going to be receiving content that just really doesn't resonate with them. And that's going to support you in being able to speak to the niche you want to speak to and make money from that side, but then still build your audience this bigger side with the overall, say, baking. If that's what it is, you'll still be able to do that.
Awesome. Okay. The next thing I'm seeing lots of in the Q&A is around, I'm just frustrated with Instagram. There's a lot of changes. I'm burned out, whatever all the different reasons are. And then the question that a lot of people have is like, is a podcast better? Is LinkedIn better? Is Pinterest better? Would YouTube be better? And I know like the top off the top answer that we would give is like, it depends on what type of business you have and where your audience is. But can we go a little deeper on this frustration with Instagram, or this belief that Instagram is not a channel that will work for you, and the solution being to jump to something else versus figuring out what does work on Instagram? If your belief is that your audience is there, I think if your belief is the audience for you is not on Instagram, then yes, jump to another platform. But my understanding from these questions is I believe my audience is on Instagram. I just can't find them. It's so frustrating. Maybe I should be doing a podcast instead. Maybe I should be doing YouTube instead. That mindset and the tools to navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Listen, it's hard. It's really, really hard. And it can feel like the algorithm is changing every 5 minutes. Like, I really do get it. It can be challenging. And I say this with funnels, but it will work if you make it work. It's that simple. It will work if you make it work. And that's the top and bottom of it. But the hard part is making it work, right? So there's a couple of things that I will say. The first is you have to find content that you can create that is valuable, that is unique, that is very consistent, and that you enjoy. You have to find what that kind of content is. So for me, back in the day, it was quotes, right? That is what the entire Boss Babe brand is built on. I love to write. Getting comfortable in front of a microphone and a camera was very challenging for me. And my team will tell you, sometimes getting me to record a video is like pulling teeth still to this day, because I like to write. That is just my thing. Now, I know it's very good for me, so I've had to pull myself out that comfort zone, but I just doubled down on writing and I got really, really good at it. I can write a viral post in a matter of 5 minutes because I've done 10,000 of them by this point. I doubled down on the thing that was valuable. It was unique at the time. I could do it consistently. I did it 4 times per day without fail, no excuses, no matter how shitty I was feeling. I wrote a post 4 times a day. And that's what I credit to my success. Like, it's really easy to look now at the podcast and the YouTube and all this stuff. I wouldn't have any of this had the younger version of me not sat with discipline 4 times per day and wrote quotes. I had to go and sit in the corner of family functions. I had to wake up early, go to bed late. Like, yes, it took an incredible amount of sacrifice to really learn this craft, but I really doubled down on it and I was committed to it. And it's really the same thing no matter what you choose to do. And for some of us, and we talked about a lot about this in Traffic Accelerator, for some of us, the kind of content that comes naturally to us is clear. Like, some of you are like, yeah, I know I'm really good at writing. One thing I would say, Lindsay's very good at podcasting. Like, I'm more of a writer, she's more of a talker. That's how we process. And what's great is to be able to pull on the thread of the thing that you're naturally quite good at and use that to really be able to get traction. Because if you cannot do something consistently, I don't give a fuck how good you are at it. It will not get traction for you. Consistency is everything. It is not showing up every single day for 30 days and then going off the grid for 60 days because you're burned out and you've got nothing left. It is showing up every single day, and you have to figure out what that thing is for you. You have to. If you want to build an audience, you have to. Now, I don't think any platform is better than any other. I mean, listen, email list, that's where it is. That's where it all happens. We do need an email list, but like the actual social platforms, your podcast, your TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, I don't really care which one of the things you choose. I just want you to pick one that you can be very consistent on. And I want you to think about, how can you really bring a unique, valuable lens to this platform? Because I will agree The landscape is very saturated, but it is not saturated with excellence. It is not saturated with excellence. You'll log on and it's a sea of sameness, like we talk about. If you can really figure out what is your uniqueness, what are you bringing to the table that's a little bit different to what someone else is bringing to the table, and what format can you do it in that is going to be very consistent, I promise you, you will start to see traction and it will start to feel worth it. But you have to be willing to stick with it. Like, I would love to be able to give you guys a shortcut. I really would. But I would be lying if I said I took a shortcut to get here. I just didn't. And like, listen, I talk about batching. I would have loved to be batched, but 4 posts a day, 4 very high quality posts a day that are generally always going viral. I had myself at a standard. I wanted to bring in very specifically 87,000 new followers per month. That was my KPI. And I never let myself go a month without pulling in that many new followers. Never, ever, ever. And I showed up when so many people wouldn't. I continued showing up when so many people gave up. And I was just more committed. I wasn't any better at it than anyone else. Like, naturally, I was a better writer than I was a talker or video or all that stuff, designer, any of it. But I wasn't any more special. But I just really wasn't willing to give up. And I would spend each day studying and learning. And still to this day, I do this, which, by the way, any of my team will back up. I will never, and this might make me hard to work for, I will never allow the excuse of just didn't land to be an excuse. I'm like, well, if it didn't land for me the last 10 years, guess what? None of us would be here. So figure it out. If I put something out there and it doesn't work, I'll archive it and I'll do it again. And if it doesn't work, I'll archive it and I will do it again. And I will stay committed to that. And we talk all about freedom-based business and freedom. Freedom is not without consistency. It is not without hard work. And it is not without discipline. And I still, to this day, have carried with me the discipline that I had 10 years ago when I had no choice but to build a business that worked. I could barely afford my rent. I had no choice. But I still, to this day, carry it through with me because I know if I get lazy with that, I will not continue to have what I have and what I have built. So I won't allow those excuses for myself and I won't allow those excuses for people that I work with. And so if you put content out there on a daily basis and it just isn't resonating, archive it, get your butt back in the seat and figure it out. Do it again, try it again. And if it doesn't work, archive it, get back in the seat and do it again, try it again. And you will get there, I promise, because people that are crushing it are not better at this than you, I promise you. And I mean, listen, there are people out there that are much better video editors than me, much better speakers than me, much more eloquent, much more XYZ. But one thing that every single one of us has in common is we can decide how disciplined we're going to be. And I just am willing to be disciplined with it. So this is a very long-winded answer because I don't want to bullshit you. There is very little that will substitute this, but I promise you, if you are willing to stick with it, if you can pull on the thread and write this down, if you can pull on the thread of some content type that comes naturally to you or naturally feels just a bit easier, a bit more exciting, something you will enjoy, stick with that. And it's okay if it's not like the trending thing. It's okay if it's not short form video and everyone's crushing it in short form video. We had Seth Godin on the podcast a few months ago, and just that episode just continues to resonate with me. It's on YouTube. It's so good. But he's like, yeah, I do my blog. That's what I do. Every single day I do my blog. He's like, I don't do YouTube. I don't do, like, my team will repurpose, but like, I don't do that. I do my blog. And I was like, but are blogs still relevant? Are people still reading? And he's like, they read mine because it's really good. And that just, for me, because I forget all the time, like sometimes I'm like, God, do I need to be like dancing on TikTok to stay relevant? I don't want to. I really don't. I'm not, that's not me. And hearing that was just such validation of, do you know what? Every single one of us has a unique perspective and has a unique value that we can bring to the table. And if we're willing to be really consistent and disciplined with it and bring that uniqueness and value to the table, there is an audience that want that. I think it's just important to share because there's like so many examples of people like Seth who, like, if someone come to me today and was like, Natalie, should I start a blog? I'd be like, probably not. But then you look at someone like Seth and he's like, I don't care if that's the standard advice. I'm good at that and I'm going to do that and I'm going to make it work. I believe that's the case for every single one of you in your business. There's something that you're really good at, and you're going to make it work. But you got to stick with it. You really, really, really got to stick with it.
And I want everybody just take 2 minutes, grab your phone, open up the Boss Babe Instagram, and look at how many posts that we've
And by the
got.
way, I've archived probably 5,000 of those.
We're 2 posts away from 10,000 today. And like, so everything Natalie has said, and I was just listening to a podcast this morning about, it was Mr. Beast, and he was talking about, yeah, everyone talks about like 10,000 hours to mastery. I think it's like 80,000 hours to mastery. Like you barely get good at something. You become elite at 10,000 hours, but you become, an outlier. You become exceptional when you don't give up just at that and you keep going. And then like Natalie said, I did 87,000 followers a month for years and years and years and years. I didn't do that in 1 month and then go, oh my gosh, now I have 100,000 followers. Cool. And stop. Right. And so I think the message of consistency is such an important thing. And we were just talking about this internally too, of how consistency is all that's going to set you apart moving forward in the way that the world is going, and that, there's more noise than ever. And I think a lot of us let our minds believe that, oh, there's so much going on, I'm just going to get lost in a sea of noise. But, I forget the stat on podcasts, but there's something like for every million podcasts, there are only 10 of them are active, or like something crazy like that. Right. And so you have to remember, it may seem to you like there's a lot of noise, but so few people are doing it at that level of consistency. And so if you can find the one thing that you love to do in terms of content and just do 100 hours of it, do 1,000 hours of it, do 10,000 hours of it, and keep going, you will eventually become exceptional at it. And all these days where you were like, it's not working, you'll look back on it. Like I'll put the link to the Mr. Beast episode. It was on My First Million. And he was like, now I look back at my first 100 YouTube videos and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so fucking grateful I didn't stop, because now I'm the best YouTuber that's ever lived. But when I was 15, I was so embarrassed and people made fun of me and I wasn't getting any traction. And I gave up for a couple months at a time, and I'd come back to it and look at me now, I'm like, oh my God, goosebumps. Right. So I think that's such an important, the consistency thing is that what's going to make you the difference between mediocrity and exceptional.
Yeah. And two, one thing I'll just say on this too, when it comes to mastery and building mastery, and I say this a lot with marketing, I think it's one of the best skills that you could probably teach yourself. No matter how AI is going to move, I know that if you are able to be an expert marketer, you will always be secure in this economy. I think marketing is an absolutely essential skill. Like looking at those 10,000 posts, right? There's quite a few of us on Instagram that have been doing it for a really long time, or like any kind of social platform that have been doing it for a really long time. And one thing you'll notice about us is we generally don't get caught up in trends and the kind of fast to change algorithms. And I can notice a lot where there'll be like talk amongst my friends group of like, did you see this person? She grew so fast on Instagram in the last 3 months, and this is her strategy. And like, we should all be learning from her and we should all be doing that. One thing that I just don't allow myself to do at this point, and I try and instill this in my team, is get caught up in the excitement train like that. Because what I see is, that's great. And she's just found that initial traction that works for her. And like, she wants to share that and everyone wants to jump on it. I love it. I'm going to stick doing what I've always done. And I'm going to stay in my lane, because I'm building my business brick by brick by brick with a very similar strategy than when I first started. And if you can get into that mindset, so you're not constantly distracted by all of the trends and the newness and like this hack and this tactic, if you can build your business on your own strategic principles, you are really building for the long term. You're not building in a way that like the algorithm's going to come and sweep you away and like everything's going to change a few months from now. And I think that's just a really important distinction, because building mastery in an area will always serve you. It really, really will. It is not something that will become irrelevant. You're building based on principles. Whereas if you're always looking at like, what's working today and I'm going to pivot, you're building based on tactics. And there's a very big difference between principles and tactics. And so that's just something to really be mindful of when it comes to shiny objects, because it can always feel like someone's just discovered something brand new and like we need to pay attention and we need to abandon ship and move on to this new thing and buy this new course because this newness, this new thing is my final ticket to finally getting what I want. It's like, no, get back to the principles and build brick by brick. You're getting there. You are getting there. All of this newness and excitement, it's going to build business like this, spike and drop, spike and drop, spike and drop. That is not a freedom-based business. That is a nervous system nightmare. We do not do nervous system nightmares over here. We really want to do something that feels really consistent. We're all in this for consistency. We want to have a business that's still cash flowing 10 years from now. And that takes, again, a lot of discipline to even say, I'm not getting distracted by that shiny object. I'm not getting distracted by that new platform. I'm staying with what works for me brick by brick.
Yeah. I think we actually have a podcast episode coming out tomorrow that goes in more in depth on this and how consistency builds momentum and how momentum is the feeling that we all want. Like momentum is what makes it feel like the unlock has happened. And so if you guys aren't already subscribed, make sure you're subscribed to the Boss Babe podcast and listen to us tomorrow because we went in on this recording for this episode. So you mentioned this, and I want to take a little bit of a turn into email marketing because we spend so much time talking about social media. And Stacey has a great question that I kind of want to dig in on. She's saying, I've done a great job building my Instagram, but I've completely avoided email marketing. My list is growing because of the link in my bio. I don't have a lead magnet and I'm not promoting my email list at all. So how should I start using my email list in the lowest lift way possible? Should I just send them something valuable every week? This really feels hard to me and is a block. The thing that sticks out here for me is like the passive email and knowing that you're already having people sign up for something where there's no lead magnet and you're not telling them anything is a huge sign to me of people's interest in knowing more from you. And also the mindset of, I think you could touch on this really well, Natalie, of like the mindset of the email list being a block and creating email content being a block and thus like mega deprioritizing it in the business and what you're leaving on the table by doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's a module inside your freedom-based business method in the Society. So that's really worth diving into where I talk about, you've got the short form that is your social media, and then you've got the long form, which is your podcast, your email list, your YouTube, whatever you choose, how to make those two work together. So that's the place that I would start if you haven't yet dive into that. Second thing, I also love that you're seeing traction without really trying. That is a really good signal, like Lindsay was saying. So I would be thinking, what is something really unique and valuable that I could send to my list that they'd really appreciate? And then I would be thinking about, okay, well, how often realistically can I send this consistently? And it might be once a week, it might be once a month, it might be once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, you'll decide. And that's the thing you'll create. That's the cadence you will go on. So it really will depend on the kind of business you have. It might be the 10 products you loved most this month. It might be something that's on your mind. It might be something you learned. It might be resources that you've been consuming. It's going to be very different for every single person's niche. So that's the way that I would think about it. And then once you are in some kind of rhythm, maybe where you really understand what you're going to send, how often you're going to send it, it probably is a really good idea to get an ideal client qualifier, because the people that are going to be jumping from your social media onto your email list, those are your potential buyers. Like that's where your money is, on your email list. Like I can probably say your revenue will grow in direct proportion to your email list growth. Like it really is that important. So if you can put together a really great ideal client qualifier that you can be sharing regular on social media to get people onto your list, that could make the biggest difference for you. But really just, I would look less at what other people in your space are doing and just thinking about, okay, based on what I already do for my audience, what kind of content I already share, what kind of content is most popular, what do I think would be the most valuable thing I could send them that they'd actually want to open? It's a really good place to start. And there's no right or wrong cadence. Once a month at absolute minimum, but more than that if you can.
Another kind of content related question that's not just social media. So Natalie's asking, what's your best advice on podcast content that helps actually translate to sales? Or should I not think of my podcast as a sales channel and just for nurturing?
Well, your podcast listeners are also probably your buyers, because social media, it's really easy to just consume very quickly. When someone's listening to a podcast with you, like they're literally listening to you talk for an hour, like they are getting to know you. They probably trust you. They are interested in what you do. And so the sales are probably going to happen as a result of that anyway. But what I would think about is if you're going into a launch, you might want to plan like 6 episodes that come before you open cart that really demonstrate your expertise on that topic. And then you're actually telling people, hey, in 6 weeks, I'm launching this. In 5 weeks, I'm launching this. Get on the wait list, register your interest. And then actually during your launch week, do an episode all about it. Why did you create it? Who is it for? Interview past students and have testimonials. Anything like that that's really going to help people to understand if it's a good fit for them will be really, really helpful. And then just on an ongoing basis, what you can do is each podcast episode could correspond to either a paid or a free product that you have, so that people are just very used to taking action from your podcast. So you can drop it in throughout. Hey, if this episode's really resonating with you, I actually have a program that helps you do this. I'll put the link in the show notes. Head here. Or I have a workbook that goes alongside this episode. The link's here. Go do that. And so it can be a very casual mention. And then during an open cart period, it can be a lot more intentional. Like, really don't be afraid to bring past clients onto the podcast and actually interview them on the podcast. We do this a lot with FFT. And it's great because people can hear from people other than me about how good the program is. They can probably see themselves in other people's results and decide whether it is or isn't a good fit for them. But your podcast listeners are your buyers, trust me.
Yeah, and to that topic, it's kind of a meta conversation for us because FFT's opening soon. And we were just talking the other day about one of the ideas, we were brainstorming podcast ideas. One of the things we talked about is thinking through all the questions a customer would have about what you do and your offer, and then using that to reverse engineer the topics for your podcast episodes. And I think that's advice overall that I wish I would have heard earlier in my entrepreneurial journey of, hey, like instead of trying to like do it right or follow some formula, just flip the switch and go sit in the seat of the customer that you're trying to sell to. Think of what the questions they're asking themselves when they're looking at you and going, should I hire this person or should I buy this person's thing? What problems do they have? What objections do they have? What are they likely to question about your program? You know, what's a hard thing to understand about your niche? And then just write all that down, or our favorite thing, put all that into ChatGPT, and it'll give you, come up with 10 ideas. And then some of them are overlapping. So you can consolidate that into one episode, and you can, my favorite thing to do is really think through the order that should be in, and really think like a teacher of like, okay, I need to go step by step through helping someone understand why they need to work with me. And I'm going to start with the most basic objections, and I'm going to go all the way into the deepest niches of their, what I do. And that's a good way to start if you're using it for selling. I would also say the other thing that Natalie and I talk a lot about in our podcast is being a storyteller and like bringing in that's why we bring customers that have been in our programs on, because they can tell their own story. And sometimes it's way more relatable than us telling you guys why you should be in it. But even just in between sales periods on your podcast, thinking about the stories in your business and your own story, and making sure every episode has this element of pulling the thread through the whole business, pulling the thread through their whole relationship with you as an audience member. And we really try to do that intentionally in every episode, whether it is an interview or it is curriculum based, or it's just me and Natalie like ranting about something happening in the world. We always try to pull through these themes that you can always expect to hear us talk about. And that's what makes a podcast something somebody wants to keep tuning into every week. It's like you're sitting with people you're familiar with, and they're going to talk about some of the same things every week. Maybe not all the same things every week, but it feels like a friendship, or it feels like a relationship where it's predictable, and in predictability, our nervous systems are comfortable. And so that's my other advice on podcast strategy for everybody. If you're wanting to get deeper into podcasting and you want it to use it to build sales relationships with your clients, is don't be afraid to make it personal and tell the stories, not just like a bunch of bullet points that you have to hit in the recording. Every time we do that, that's where we see really good performance in our pod.
I love that tip. Stories sell. Stories are really important. And then one thing that I'll leave you with, because I know this question does come up a lot and you haven't posted this, but I think this comes up, is like, well, how do I know if I'm giving too much value away? Like, how do I know how much value to give, but then how much to reserve in my program? My simple answer to this is I give information away as much as I possibly can. Like, I'll give every single piece of information because I want people to pay to work with me for the application, right? So when I'm scripting all of my podcast episodes for our pre-launch for FFT, I'm giving all the information. I'm like, here's what you should do. Here's what you should look at. Like, I'm throwing every single thing I've got at my audience, because whether they choose to buy from me or not, I really want them to keep listening to my podcast. I want them to learn from it. I want them to get value. That's the whole purpose of the podcast. But But then I trust and know that if they really want the application of this, then they'll come and work with me. If they want to get my feedback, if they want to get my templates, if they want to get more structured learning, the application, they'll work with me. And especially in this age of AI, right? Information is everywhere. Information is prolific. Application is not. And so same thing with your social media, right? When you're creating this series that I've given every single one of you homework to go create. So please write your homework down and tag me in your series because I want to see them. And I do look at them, I promise. And I also look when you tag me in your 10 by 10s. But with your social media, don't be afraid to give so much information away. Like really give your best stuff away because people will come to you for the application. I promise. Like that's what they'll want. When you have a course, that's all the information really organized in a very specific way that helps people to work through it really specifically. It is application in a way that they get the templates, they get the systems. It is application in a way where they'll get your expertise specifically on their business. And that's the kind of thing that you just can't convey on a podcast episode or on a social media post. So please don't worry about giving too much of that away. There'll always be room for application. That's what people are going to pay for. This was a great call. You guys asked the best questions.
There's so many good questions.
So good. Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you all so much for bringing such good questions. And just, like the vibe, I always have the chat up on here and it just is so amazing to see where you're all at. So a couple of links that we mentioned, FFT we've talked about. If you want to join us, grab yourself a spot on the wait list. That is coming in March, which we're really excited about. And then Traffic Accelerator. Listen, we give you a ton of stuff inside Society and you've got a lot to work with here. So that's an option. But Traffic Accelerator, if you want to just take it a step further and you want a really, really accelerated program to help you double down on your traffic strategy, then that's an option too. So take a look at it. But Society really does have so many resources as well. Like, that you can be diving into the 10 by 10 things that can really be supporting in your business. So there's a ton of options available to you to dive into. Just pick what feels good for the stage that you're in your business right now. All right, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right, you guys. Bye.